Spectrum of my heart. A strange and withdrawn woman was simply passing by incognito. She lived on Plateau Mont Royal on the third floor of a triplex, in a small 1.5. It was dark. She had a desk looking out on a broken tile window on the back alley. Spider plants ran around the frame. She also lived surrounded by a dozen cats. The unpacked grocery store was hanging on the kitchen counter. Remnants of his dinner on the stove, cats munching on the remains. She did not speak to anyone, she had never learned. Her childhood had been reclusive, such that one did not have to show her too much because she looked suspicious with her imaginary friends. It was the loneliness that had led her to the path of the imaginary, she felt so less alone. Since her youth, her parents claimed that at age 18 she would be entitled to suitcases as a gift, and so it was. Only that day, she will find her belongings in black trash bags near the door. She took her things and disappeared from her parents' horizon forever. Having found a job as a waitress at a cafe, she managed to afford a modest rent on the Plateau Mont Royal. She had left the suburbs where her parents lived for the big city, attracted by her charm and magnificence. With her savings, she managed to get her hands on an old PC, a Pentium 3 with an old version of Windows. She did not know much about computers, but she thought she'd use them to write. So she started writing a science fiction book about Works, the default Windows writing software of that time. Quickly irritated by the lack of functionality, she wanted more. A girlfriend of hers was studying at the university and had the privilege of buying software inexpensively. She asked her colleague to get him Office. Shortly after, she was able to install it on her PC. It was the first time she had installed software and it was a bit of a freak. Still, she had no problem installing Office on her PC. She could not afford an internet connection, so she started using unsecured Wi-Fi connections. She had the idea to use the open connection available from her cell phone, to share it with her PC. Sacha was not strange just by her way of life, she simply was. When people spoke to her, she always answered with a smile and explanation to silence his interlocutors. In fact, they did not understand his information, simply because it was too much thought for them. She had a strange gift. That of guessing people, their intentions as well as their unspoken. She had the opportunity to transpose herself into the body and mind of others in order to feel them. This donation never earned her popularity after people who fled her more often than not, especially because of the sometimes frustrating truths she brought to light. Sacha never did anything to chance. Everything was calculated. She was going through her life path, guided by it. It was not surprising that she often knew in advance what was going to happen, and she acted accordingly. Sacha's spiritual guide was not what one would expect. It was neither an angel nor a demon, it was the Lord of Death himself. Sometimes when she lay down in the evening before falling asleep, he seemed like a shadow. She could not really see it or touch it, but she could feel it. She could talk to him. He guided her on a tortuous, dark path, full of pitfalls and difficult. It is noted that the path of the black light is much more hazardous than that of the white light, but much richer in knowledge and in personal and spiritual baggage. Sacha was also interested in astronomy. From the city, it's difficult to distinguish the sky and the stars, but every Saturday of the summer she took the bus to St-Rémy on the south shore of Montreal and went to a very special place. The bus terminus was a 1-hour walk from its destination. Hair in the wind, sneakers on her feet and backpack, she walked to her secret place. A bike lane facilitated her progress until a certain time when she left the trail to venture into a field of corn. At the beginning of the summer, making your way was easy enough to reach the destination, but as the summer progressed, the road became tedious as the corn grew higher and higher until it was bigger. The destination of Sacha had nothing in common. It was not a river or a quiet oasis she was looking for, but a quiet and inspiring place to do stargazing. This place she had discovered by doing a search on the internet. In St-Rémy, there was a wind turbine area scattered here and there across the field. The most accessible was an hour's walk from the nearest bus stop. Wind turbine 18 was enthroned, majestic in the middle of this cornfield. Sacha had braved the unknown to this windmill, to find tranquility and an unparalleled place of observation of the sky. She always arrived at the site a little before 11 a.m. She had taken care to bring with her something to eat, drink and even a blanket, in anticipation of spending the night at the foot of this wind turbine. As night fell, she lay on the little balcony at the foot of the windmill and watched the sky. She listened to the sounds of the wind turbine turn in a never-ending movement. This noise led her into a trance. Her arms crossed behind her head, she listened and watched. In the early morning, she took the road home, refreshed and intoxicated with his experience. From nowhere, his computer skills deepened over time. When she could not find the information or software she needed, she redoubled her research efforts, sometimes even finding the impossible to find. Everything seemed normal to him. She rarely had the opportunity to compare her research and information with others. She had no point of reference, no point of comparison. This was not an obstacle, however, for her in her steps. She searched the net relentlessly, always looking for more advanced software and applications to meet her requirements. Since his youth, Sacha had always loved drawing. Since she had a computer in her possession, she wanted to do drawing and image processing. The expensive software for the execution of these tasks rendered the mission almost impossible. Cracking and stealing licenses for such software was probably within her abilities, but she did not like that way. Sacha will focus his research towards freeware. She targeted her needs and controlled her searches with specific keywords until she found what she needed. In fact, there is free software on the net that follows the search history. Sacha research thus always led her to make the find of the century. She managed to get some kind of clones software more vogues for free. All this had happened without her knowledge, before she became aware of the facts about 10 years later. She had managed to create a real symbiosis between her mind and the computer mind. She had only to desire and her wishes were fulfilled. In the wee hours of the morning, as she was walking to her bed, she was going to join the world of the dead. To dive into sleep every night, came back for her to give up life for death, because you never know if there will be a next morning. The Lord of Death had become his lover. She found him every night. Beside him she was no longer afraid, not like the first time she had seen her appearance in a tree of a dark, cloudy night, and the fog made the scene even more terrifying. This dream of her childhood had once terrified her. The Lord of Death had a wolf at his side standing on a branch. There were long years when night fell she was afraid to look up to the treetops, for fear of seeing the wolf. Sacha had completed his first novel after 2 years of intense writing. This book was about an alien threat from a solar system independent of ours. She had raised her eyes to the sky and saw what looked like a star with 3 very bright axes. Every night she could see this star shining in the sky, and no matter the time of its observations, it always presented the same position, but it seemed strangely closer to the Earth. Worried by the situation and by her observations, she noted the whole thing and advanced on some calculations on the position of the stars. Sacha had also noted strange positions of the sun, which no longer lies fully to the west. The sun seemed to take a strange tangent for its sunset, heading further and further south, although one day it saw the sunset completely south of the city. Nobody seemed to have noticed the situation, yet alarming. Sacha, with a humanitarian conscience, said her duty as a citizen was to warn NASA of her observations, which she did. She went to the NASA website and found a link to contact them by email. She wrote down the situation in a few words and sent the email. The remark was unanswered. However, from then on, she was subscribed to the NASA newsletter. Astonished and delighted to hear about news from NASA, she was still worried about sending robots to Mars, and the search for exoplanets seemed to be an important part of their research. Only, there was a star that seemed to come dangerously close to the Earth, and that did not seem to be part of the concerns of the space agency. Sacha began to search for contacts in the population, including Facebook and Google. On Facebook, she met an astrophysicist. She will submit a few sketches that she had written to explain the situation. He finally answered that he did not know anything about it. Another person residing in France answered the call. That night, they exchanged information about the weather, taking note of the temperature and the time the information was recorded. That evening, it was in November, it was 7 degrees more in France than in Quebec, as in general it is rather the opposite. The weather was heavy and overcast in Quebec as in France, while strong winds were blowing over France. it was calm in Quebec. Sacha was on the roof of the triplex where she lived to record all this information. The weather was so heavy and uncertain, she was scared. She had gone home as fast as she had gone outside. Under the duvet, she will find it difficult to sleep, thought of everything that happened. Closing his eyes, his ghost appeared to him like all nights. It had always appeared that such a discreet and withdrawn shadow. He did not speak, barely moved, and did not even breathe. That night Sacha will find rest in restless sleep. When she finds a deeper sleep, she plunges into a strange dream. His specter appeared to him. He was standing in a meadow or fog and at night was making the scene look terrifying. She was standing at some distance from him, advancing towards him step by step. He opened his arms and pulled her toward him. In her lair she felt sucked. His face, though absent, because it was a dark shadow, leaned towards her to offer him the most exciting kiss that can be. When he woke up, Sacha took some time to decide his dream of reality, so it seemed true. At his computer, Sacha was busy with 1,000 projects. She had started with the idea of writing a novel. However, from one point to another, she had bifurcated her interests towards computer science proper. After writing her novel she would have liked to have it published by a recognized publishing house. She sent her book to a publisher in France who would agree to publish her book. Only conditions arose. The edition would be done by an author. He was asked for €2,500 to put his book in press. With her little waitress salary, Sacha could not afford such extravagance. She circumvented the situation by seeking solutions that was accessible to her. She was going to self-publish by publishing her book on her own website. The problem was now, how to do it. She began to take an interest in website design. Knowing nothing a priori, she ended up knowing enough about the subject to venture there. With money in hand, it's much easier to get in touch with a web host and a domain name, but with a $0 project budget, she was looking for free web solutions. Days and weeks of research and testing of all kinds finally proved conclusive when Sacha found Google Site, a platform to create his website for free online. She learned the basics of creating a website with Google. The completed site and the online book remained now to make it known, to reference it. Referencing a site makes it easy to find a given site with the help of keywords. Google offers AdSense for this purpose, but the solution is rather expensive. So Sacha found once again an alternative, completely free. Using Excel files, she created hypertext links between her website address and keywords, and shared the link publicly in this spreadsheet. More than spectacular result. Over time, his site and all his shares on G&D occupied according to the right keywords, the first 3 pages of Google. One day she only wrote the word writer in her search on Google and she saw, to her surprise, her portrait. The web is moving, it appears differently today. Sissy little cat of Sacha showed an interest in computer screens. Sacha then thought of creating a game with mice that can be moved around the screen to entertain cats. She downloaded a platform for creating games in 2D. She drew the mice and inserted them on a grass-like background. It was not perfect, but the project was in the air. Sacha made the following statement. When we do not find what we want on the web, we can push it a little bit so that it gives us exactly what we need. Missing a few logical explanations and almost magic, applications hoped to emerge, such as the fly and a mouse, applications now available on Google Play and are the pleasure of cats. Sissy, Sacha's pussy, and her other kitties are crazy about this Android app. Cats first observe the fly or mouse on the screen. Then they can kick the device. When the fly or the mouse are still and a cat gives a tap, they move in the screen by emitting sounds. Sacha spent a lot of time watching her cats having fun with electronics, a step forward for felines, she told herself. Sacha was always on the lookout for improvements to his PC. She was looking for a solution for a more user-friendly Windows interface, with more options. She was working with the Windows 7 operating system. So she started some research left and right on the web that led her to the Windows site. She searched and peeled the site of Microsoft to the top, then went to TechSpot where she found the rare pearl. Windows 10. In fact, this operating system was not yet available to the public, but in design. She became an insider and took possession of the first version of Windows 10 available. His passion for computer and writing even made him completely forget his life on the margins of society. At night, she did not fear, because from now on the arms of the Lord of Death hugged her and made her waltz all night to other galaxies.